Guys. Ah. Got my tiara, I got my vino, I have my kitty, I have my annoying dog. Hello, welcome to Ma Hill Reads. My name is Kiersten Michele and I am a YA fantasy author and prolific bookworm. I had a bad month in terms of just like stress level. You can tell I had a bad month because I read 21 books. Oops. So, today I'm going to try and do my August wrap up. I'm just going to talk through and tell you a little bit about each of the books that I read and what I liked about it, maybe what I didn't like. I have some vino, I have my cat beside me, my dog's outside and will probably want to come in partway through this video because that's just how this works. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so there's gonna be a theme of the books that I read this month because I was in a sci-fi kick and then like a horror thriller kick. So a lot of the books I read fell into those two categories and I'll talk about the other books that didn't. So the first book I'm gonna talk about, and it's August 31st right now, so I don't think I'm gonna finish any more books today. We'll see. But I'm reading the third in the series right now, but I read the first two over this month. So those are Illuminae, I think it's Illuminae, and Gemina by Amie Kaufman and Kristoff. So these are, and I'm gonna forget the name, I'm gonna put here, a specific type of book that is made up of found documents, conversations, text, transcriptions of video feed, but these are sci-fi, young adult sci-fi books about, how to say this? So pretty much it's an illegal mining operation on this planet gets attacked by their competitor and they are illegal, so the competitors, hey, you can't complain that we are killing you, but they do. And the government comes, a ship from the government comes, tries to save them. A lot of people die and one or two ships end up surviving and leaving the planet and then get chased by this competitor company because they are like, oh crap, people can't know what we did. We need to kill everyone before they tell anyone. So it is about these two characters. The two main characters obviously are teenagers because it's YA. I don't care how realistic you think it is. YA books are amazing. These two teenage characters get caught up in this and are trying to save their ship from getting blown up by this horrible company. And then there's also a plague going on and the AI of the ship's going crazy. So stuff goes down, and I'm not going to tell you like about this book because it's the second, but this book is the follow-up to this book with new characters. That's all I'm going to say. I loved these books. Here's the thing. I read these in paper while also listening to the audiobook. I highly recommend that. If you can get both, like physical copy and audiobook, and read them at the same time, oh my god, so worth it. Because obviously, like I said, it's made up of a lot of pictures and there is some fancy ways in how stuff is written. And not only is that just really cool to read on the paper, but then in the audiobook, they use the audio track to also convey this. So you hear like the gunshots when there's people shooting. When the person is walking through space, you hear them hitting against the hull of the spaceship. It is just so amazingly done. And I also just love the story, both stories. I'm so excited for the third one. I know these are older books, so other people probably like, whatever, but I've had the first one for way too long. And every time I tried to read it, it was really hard to read. And then I found the audiobook and it made it easier to read. And I love it. 5 out of 5 stars. I don't really star books, but I absolutely love this book. This is definitely a new favorite series Obviously, I haven't read the third book, so maybe that'll change, but I seriously doubt it at this point. So, love it. Highly recommend. Okay, other sci-fi books I read, another series I've been reading. I read the first one a while ago. It is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, so it is the Wayfarers series. So this month, I think I read 3 of the series. So the first one that I read this month, which is the second book in the series, is A Closed and Common Orbit. I think this might be my favorite book of this series so far. And I think that's saying something because I love Becky Chambers. Girl. Or whatever you identify as. Person. Oh, love. This series is, ironically, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but I would compare this. I compared the first one a little bit to Firefly. I would compare the series as a whole a little bit to Murderbot by Martha Wells, because each story is different characters. You're not necessarily following the same main cast each time, although you have the overlap of different people in the same world. But it is really just an exploration of humanity without humans. I mean, there are some humans, but a lot of the characters aren't human, and yet by seeing these non-human characters interacting with each other, it is a beautiful perspective of actual humanity and how we view things. Becky Chambers does such a wonderful job of taking on gender and just reality of how we view the world, how we view each other, how we view sex, and showing the reader of like how much of that is just constructs created by humans. And like looking at other alien species and being like, yeah, that's completely different for them. So I really liked this one. This one specifically is about an AI who pretty much, not exactly up to her, gets put into an illegal body to become more independent AI, which is not technically okay, but things happen. She ends up in this body, and it's about her kind of learning who she is and coming to this understanding of, yes, she's an AI, yes, she is like artificial, but she is also, I don't know if a person's the right word, but a person, and learning about herself and growing her identity. So I just loved this book. And then the other 2 that I read, same series, and I'm gonna have to read these because these names are always long. So the third one then, so the second one I read this month, was The Record of the Spaceborn Few, which, again, different characters, different setting, same world, or same universe, but it is taking place on Exodus, which is the spaceship that, if I remember correctly, it's the original, one of the original spaceships that left Earth when humans pieced out on the planet because it was not viable anymore, think WALL-E, and people still live on it. Because I actually really love this because it just feels so human. They found this whole universe and all these planets, but there are still humans that are like, well, I was born on this ship, so I want to live on this ship because this is where our generations have come from, and this is us, and we're living here. And so it's like the rugged people of like, they live on a spaceship still instead of going to planets. This one was heartbreaking. Very beautiful. Like I said, I don't know if it was my favorite. A Closed and Common Orbit, I think, just explored some really beautiful themes around kind of identity. But this book just was emotional. So also loved it. And then the latest one and the last one I read this month is A Galaxy and the Ground Within. So this one probably ranks right under Closed and Common Orbit, especially the end. And if you've read it, you'll know what I mean when it's like the epilogues. But so this one, once again, new planet. We have a couple characters, or I think one character we've already met before in this one. And it is about these characters, all different species, don't know each other, a bunch of strangers, end up at this waypoint during a natural disaster and end up stuck there for a few days. And once again, Becky uses these alien species to explore what it means to be human and what it means to be people and to get along but also disagree. I absolutely loved it. All of the characters were just so well-rounded, well-explored, and the interactions between them and getting to see these other species that, like, I don't think there's any humans. Yeah, there's no humans in this book. And so they make fun of humans at one point about eating cheese, even though we can't eat cheese and we have to eat this enzyme to eat the cheese. And I've never felt so seen in, like, the most embarrassing way. But with these non-humans, with these species, of them kind of exploring each other, and you get to see the disagreements between them, which is just interesting because humans as people, we tend to love hating each other for being different, and here these species are completely different, and what that looks like for them to get along when they don't even breathe the same air, for example. So yes, the Wayfarers series is just love it, love it. 6 out of 5 stars, because no one can tell me how to do my rating system. Okay, so the next ones I want to talk about, like I said, I also have been reading at the same time. I do feel like they're very similar vibes. I've been reading the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. Once again, I read the first one a while back. I don't know if it's a while, but not this month. So this month, the first one of the Murderbot series that I read was Artificial Condition. Okay. Similar to the Wayfarers series, I think the second book, The Artificial Condition, was, so far, I've not even touched finishing the series, but so far I think that one has been my favorite. Once again, it is about a murderbot, and he is getting to know this different universes, but I think it's a ship's AI. And once again, you get this exploration of what it means to be human and have an identity and personhood with non-humans. And I love it. And yeah, Martha Wells, I saw her speak actually at a convention before I even read any of her books, because I just hadn't gone around to them. I tend not to read short books because I blow through them so fast. But I finally started reading, and I'm like, yeah, I get everything she said, just in terms of how well she is at writing human emotion, and also this awkwardness around emotion and this sense of alienness. It's been very much compared to like how people with autisms, so autism or neurodivergence, kind of interact with the world. So yeah, I just, like I said, it's amazing what you can do with non-humans in exploring humanity. So loved Artificial Condition by Martha Wells. And then I also read the Rogue Protocol, which is then the third Murderbot book. Loved it as well. It's funny because I say, oh, I didn't like it as much as the second one, but still a 5-star. It's just the second one was like 6-star. So 7-star, I don't know. Still loved this one. Continued to explore humanity and also explore like relationships and the meaning of having relationships and not having relationships. And the therapist in me was just like, oh, the attachment trauma. So if you read it, you know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Or I'm just talking nonsense. But absolutely love it. I am really excited to continue on with the Murderbot series, in part because the Wayfarer series doesn't have any more books right now. So I have to wait on those. So I'm just gonna binge Murderbot as much as I can. Thank you, library. This entire channel is supported by Libby. Okay, I think that was it for sci-fi. Now I want to talk about the more, I don't know what to call this category because it's a broad range, but like horror, thriller books that I read. Like I said, I was in a kick. This is not my usual genre. I am a wimp when it comes to horror, which is reflected in the fact that mostly the horror I read is YA horror, because that's as much as I can handle. And even that's given me nightmares. Aaron Craig. But I really just was in a mood, and so I read a bunch, including some adult ones. we'll talk about that. So, the first one that I read that I'm like, I don't know if it's really considered horror, but it's listed under that, and it was horrific at times. So that is the Moon of the Crusted Snow. I'm gonna butcher the first name, so I'm just gonna write it out, and then the last name is Rice. And so the Moon of the Crusted Snow is about a indigenous community up in Canada that just weird things start happening. The power goes out, the phone goes out, the internet goes out, and everyone's kind of like, that kind of happens sometimes. We're in the far north, we're on a reservation, the government doesn't take care of us well, and that's a little unusual. And then one of the kids who's off in college shows up on a snowmobile and is like, so guess what, guys? This is happening everywhere. Shit's going down. So it is about their community kind of processing through whatever is happening. You don't really ever find out what's happening. So this book, it's hard to talk about this book because I feel like I can't say it a lot, but this book really, to me, and I might just be making this up, feels like it's a pretty big metaphor about looking at indigenous cultures and the fact that indigenous cultures are built with this base of they can handle the apocalypse. They can handle stuff getting taken away from them because A, they've lived and survived on the land and actually passed down as much as they could that tradition, but also like they've had their lives destroyed. They've had their land taken away from them. They even say that in the book of, we've had the apocalypse happen to our people when we were kicked off our land, when they took our children. So it's a lot about the resilience of the indigenous people, and also it seems like just the community as a whole, and some stuff around outsiders and white people coming in and doing things. So it was a good book. Did I like read it and end and be like, that was just so, no. I was like, that was a book. I'm glad I read it. I don't think I'll ever read it again unless I get in a weird mood, but I think it's a book that you should read. This is a weird endorsement, but yeah, it's just one of those books you're like, I can't really say I enjoyed it, but I'm glad I read it. Yeah, really well put together story. Okay, so the next one, Weight of Blood by Tiffany Jackson. The cover of this sold me, and then it's Carrie meets Get Out racist issues. And it's YA, wasn't too scary, so it was okay. But it is about this girl who has her entire life been passing as white, not because she wants to, but because her dad told her to. And so she ends up, there's a rainstorm, her hair curls, and everyone's, oh, you're black, cool. Now we can bully you. Not great. So, it is, when I say Carrie-esque, it is about her going to prom. You don't know exactly what's happening, but you're getting these like flash forwards to this podcast where people died, there was a giant fire, everyone blamed her, and you don't know what happened, and the book is leading up to the events until you figure out what did happen at the end. And just, I have no complaints about this book. No complaints. Is it a new favorite? I don't know. It's not my type of story. It's not a story I'd ever want to reread because it's horrific. But oh my god, it's also like perfect. I highly recommend, especially if you like those horror books that critique race and culture, like Get Out does. It was really good. I've read a few other books, and I'm not going to call them out because I feel mean doing this, but this I think was one of the better books I've read that takes that theme of critiquing racism and puts it into this horror-esque setting. I think this has been my favorite that I read, and yeah, like I said, absolutely no complaints, other than it was not a happy book, but I loved it. The other one, YA, that I read is You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, written by Kalynn Bayron. If I remember correctly, her name technically does not rhyme. It's the one that just came out. A lot of people were talking about it. I enjoyed this book. Was it a flawless story? No, very few are. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight was entertaining. It was weird. It was gross at times. It was horrific at times. I am so glad I read it. No regrets. It was a solid book. I do get some of the criticisms. I get why some of the people didn't like it. I know the epilogue is really controversial, and by that I mean I've heard 2 booktubers who have completely opposite opinions of the epilogue ruined it for me and the epilogue made the book. I don't know if I sit on either end of that. I think the epilogue was expected. I wasn't super surprised by the epilogue. I also think the epilogue could have not existed, but I also am glad it did because I think thematically it fit. But yeah, it's a weird book. Like, weird. You think you know what it's about? No, it's weird. Okay, so the next one is Starlings by Amanda Linsmeier. Oh. So another YA horror-esque book. This one had ups and downs for me. So it actually, starting out, I was like, okay, I love the vibes. Great vibes. And then it fell pretty quickly into feels really predictable. I feel like I know what's happening. And then it surprised me. And I was like, oh, okay, so it was predictable, but the predictability ended partway through. You got to the part that you were like, I knew that was coming. And then it was like, I liked it. I'm glad I read it. No regrets. I loved the mood, the setting. Like, it's just one of those books you like just melt into, that like horror, creepy, what's happening setting. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how it ended. No regrets. Okay, and so the other one, and I'm actually doing this long-term video of rating books that have low ratings. So this one, I think it's 3.09 Goodreads, which like feels really low. So it's The Woods Are Always Watching by Stephanie Perkins. And I think I know why it has a low rating. So I'm gonna talk about my perspectives and then I'll talk about that. But I liked this book. Had I known what the book was about, I don't think I would have read it because it's just not my genre. It's a not true crime, but it's a crime book more than it is a horror mystery. I expected the cover feels very spooky, woods, supernatural. There's no supernatural in it. Like, where are the ghosts? It's just about bad people. It's about humans suck. So I think some people went into it like me and expected it to be more supernatural horror, and then it ended up being just more straightforward crime horror. And I had absolutely no problem with it. Great character arts written, just not my vibe. And so I think maybe that's why I got some bad ratings. Some of the bad ratings I think were the same kind of people that don't like Barbie based on some of the stuff they said. Because I was like, is that really necessary? Oh, there's bad men, so that must mean men are bad and you hate all men. But I think if you like that straightforward crime horror-ness and camping, it's a great book. Another one that I've heard some mixed reviews on is The Writer's Retreat, which is a debut by, is it Julia? Julia Bartz. This is another one where I think people did not know what to expect from this book, because I know I didn't, and I had heard about the book, I had read about the book, I thought I knew what I was getting into. Whew. Did not. This book, I liked reading it. Never, ever would read that again. No. Parts of it were horrific, disgusting, uncomfortable. It just gave me the ooze. And I get why. And I think they were there for a reason. I did not enjoy them. And I think that's why a lot of people had some bad things to say about it, is because it was like, this stuff made me uncomfortable and therefore no. But as you will see from my discussion later of my horror readings, I don't care about being uncomfortable when reading. So even though I didn't like some of the scenes, I enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. The end, I hated. I hated the end. It felt very abrupt. The epilogue just felt like I thought I had missed something. So I'm not sure I liked the end, but the book as a whole I really enjoyed, even though, like I said, weird. So now we can talk about When I Say I Don't Mind Being Uncomfortable. Grady Hendrix, How to Sell a Haunted House. Nightmares. Nightmares having to put this book down in the middle of reading it and just... I almost quit reading it at one point. Oh, I loved it. It's a really good book. Grady Hendrix has this wonderful way of twisting horror, like true, this is adult, gross, nasty horror, with these beautiful themes about relationships and family. And I loved that part. So I kept reading it, and I'm glad I kept reading it because the relationship stuff was so beautiful. Oh my god, the end, I was just like, my heart. The journey along the way was not okay. I want to burn this book so much. But yeah, I loved it. This one, I love. This is gonna feel like such a jump. Another kind of supernatural, not horror, book that I read was a middle grade book called Spirit Hunters by Ellen O. A very different vibe. I enjoyed this book. I struggled with it a little bit, and it's hard because I'm like, middle grade's always a little iffy. Am I struggling with this because I don't like the story, or is it because the story's not meant for me? Because I've read a lot of middle grades that I love, but this one felt a little bit too young just in terms of like, how are you not picking up on this, girl? It's taking you way too long to figure out what's happening. Yeah, maybe that is my 30-something-year-old self going, oh, why doesn't this little girl understand things? But I'm glad I read it, enjoyed it. It's meh for me. And I definitely would recommend it to kids. Like, 100% I'd be curious if other kids would think the same way I did. Okay, next, I'm so excited to talk about this one. Kate Alice Marshall came out with her next book, The Narrow. I love Kate Alice Marshall. So, this one is about I'm gonna forget, is it college or in high school? I think they're in high school. So it is about these girls who go to this school, and there's the Narrow, which is this really dangerous river that if you fall in, you die. And yet every year at the beginning of the year, they jump over it to be cool. Sounds like kids. It is about these people at this campus, and one of their people that they used to know got sick at one point, and the main character ends up getting roped into helping the sick girl because she needs the money. Which, I feel like that explanation tells you nothing about what this story is about. This story is about creepy hauntings, ghosts, drownings, yeah. But I feel like I can't say a lot without spoiling. Was this one of my favorite books by Kate Alice Marshall? No. But that's not saying much, because I'm like obsessed with a lot of her books. I devoured this book, I think, in 2 days. So I think that says something. I really liked it. I think it's just one of those books where after I put it down, it doesn't stick with me as much as some of her other stories and some of the other twists and things that happen in those stories did. But I still really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Always. I will always recommend her. Okay, and then the last few books I'm going to talk about are the ones that kind of don't fall into, there's some fantasy and some other random ones. But oddly enough, I didn't read a lot of fantasy this month, which never happens. But, and by a lot, I only read like 4 or 5, whatever. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about I don't own, and that is How to Bite Your Neighbor. I think there's a subtitle, yeah. So How to Bite Your Neighbor and Win a Wager by Dean Bryn. This book was good. It's funny, a lot of the negative criticism I saw on Goodreads was like, I didn't sign up for a YA book. This has no spice in it. This is so fade to black. That was fine. So going into it, if that's what you want, know that it's not that. I thought it was adorable. This was sold to me on Instagram as a book that took vampirism and treated it like a disability. So what if people who had vampirism had disabilities, were on the edge of society? So I loved it. I thought it did a really good job of what it was looking for, what it did. It was a cute romance. I do think I get why people called it YA feeling. The kids are, I think, like 20s, like early 20s. So I'm like, yeah, they're acting like 20-year-olds. Duh. I don't know. I think people are so used to vampires acting like old, but this vampire is literally like 20. So I really enjoyed it. Would recommend if you like that kind of, it's a very more just like, it edged on contemporary romance. But yeah, I thought it was quite enjoyable. Absolutely no complaints. But I came in with a lot less expectations, I think, than other people. Okay, I'm excited to talk about this one. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, I read this month. I'm not going to say a lot about it because I know a lot of people are wanting to go into this stuff pretty blind, but this book is probably one of my favorites by Brandon Sanderson. I loved it. I'm also like I compare it to Warbreaker because Warbreaker is also like a standalone, but I thought the writing was really fun in terms of the character and the personality. I thought it was Brandon Sanderson's best romance, and I think that's because it's more focused on the friendship versus the actual romance. But yeah, I thought it was really beautiful. If you do have a chance to get the illustrated special edition, it's so gorgeous. But even just find it from someone else and go through the pictures. I'm not even gonna say that much about it. 5 stars, 7 stars, I don't know. It was great. Okay. Other random books that I read this month was The Dog of the North by Elizabeth Mckenzie. And so this book is I think it's a contemporary drama. I don't know how this fell into my radar. It fell onto my TBR and then the library had it and I was like, sure, I'll pick this up. Completely out of my usual genre. But it is about a woman who's, how does this work? Yeah, so her grandma is needing to get kicked out of her house because she's a hoarder and the authorities are worried about her. So granddaughter has to come down and figure out how to take her out and clean her house, and then everything falls apart. It is just a weird book. She ends up with this guy's car because that guy went and had a heart attack or something. It's a weird book, but it was so cute. It was such a little adventure. I'm not sure how I feel about the romance in it. Just not sure how I feel about the romance in it, but I loved the story. I loved the characters. Wacky little characters. Fun read. Okay, and then I read Silver in the Bone, which I have mixed feelings about. So this is by Alexandra Bracken. This book started out really slow for me. It's a slow burn. I was trying to get into it, and I was not gonna not read it because I felt like I have a really pretty edition, thank you Fairy Loot, but I also I liked the idea of it, I liked the writing, I liked the characters. It just felt slow, and then it picks up and then goes crazy, and then the end I was just like, you kidding me? I have to wait? I'm gonna read the next book. I think this book might be one of those books that I actually like more after reading the second book, depending on how that second book feels. But it's a beautiful written book, King Arthur story, very weird, very confusing at times. But I really enjoyed it, and I want to read the next one. So I think that says something. And then the last book is a reread, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. What to say about this book? I reread it for a reason. I actually read it originally on Kindle, and so I wanted to buy it in paperback and then go through and annotate and underline all my favorite lines. And I can't annotate too much because I want my husband to read it and I can't do spoilers as I'm reading it. But yeah, if you have not read this book yet, read it. If you don't know what it's about, read it. I loved it. It is a book, and I know a lot of people complain of it's a book you have to read 100 pages of, not knowing what's happening. Yeah, but what's happening is cool. Like, it's beautifully written, even though you're like, I have no idea what's happening. But it's very beautifully being told to me. So, whatever. I'll walk around with this guy who's fishing in this house. Yeah. So, I love it. I'm gonna continue to reread this probably. So, that is all. Oh my god, this video was so long. I read too much. Is there any such thing? Yeah, there is. Okay. I should probably go back to writing. Anyways, so I enjoyed this month's books. I do not know what one's my favorite. I can tell you the Wayfarers and Murderbot series are killing it. The Illuminae series is killing it. Just some really good books this month. I had no books that I DNF'd, I think, this month, which I think might be one of the reasons I read so many, is because I don't think I started a single book that I did not finish, except for the few that I'm, like, still reading. So, good month. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble on. If you read any of the books I read and have different opinions or similar opinions, let me know in the comments. And otherwise, I will see y'all at a different time.